Perfect. Well, I'll go ahead and share my screen, and I will just echo what Owen was saying, that this is definitely an excellent showing of a crowd here. This is a great group, and I really appreciate everybody showing up to support us here and ask good questions. So on that note, definitely be sure to follow up with any questions that you have during the Q&A. Think about what those are, because that's, for all of us, that's the most valuable portion of this. So I'll tell you a little bit about Shrpa. So here at Shrpa, we love discovering amazing adventures throughout Minnesota and beyond. And what better way to explore than with the help of a local? So that's why there's Shrpa. Adventures created by locals, experienced by you. And I'm excited to announce that not only do we love Minnesota, but Minnesota loves us back. As part of the Minnesota Cup, we were named the most innovative Greater Minnesota startup. In addition, we finished third in the high tech division, and then first in the E1 Ignite Cup. So why does Minnesota love us? Well, it's because we're addressing a big problem that we all face. And there's a couple of reasons that. Let's face it though, the problem with vacations is planning them. When people have a day off of work to get away from their computer, they don't want to spend 3 hours of that day combing through review sites, blog posts, things to do listings. They need a vacation from that. In fact, 42% of millennials say that planning is one of the biggest stresses of traveling. And others are trying their best to help. Airbnb offers guided experiences, but requiring someone to go along with you as a guide really limits the amount of experiences that they can provide. And our local visitors bureaus, they're doing their best to highlight their members, but oftentimes they end up just creating a directory that provides the same information that you can already find from a Google search. So we still have to do all of the planning. So that's why there's Shrpa. Shrpa enables travelers to discover experiences by removing the uncertainty of exploring a new community or new places in your own community. Shrpa's platform connects travelers with self-guided adventures that are created by locals. So let's go look at what that looks like. So it starts with discovery. People find our adventures either on Shrpa.com or through one of our partner sites, like what you see here with KTDC, one of our local TV stations, where we're featured on their website in a couple of different places. And then after finding an adventure that interests them, they can click in and learn a little bit more about what to expect, what to bring, and even what type of an adventure this really is to see if it's something that interests them. And finally, clicking into the Explore will guide them through each one of the stops, helping them to get the most out of their adventure as they're given guidance on what they should be looking forward to at each one of these locations. And this is where everyone is finding these adventures currently. We started here in Rochester, but we're putting all of the pieces together to be able to cover the entire map with adventures by this coming spring. So let's talk a little bit about what we are and how we're doing that. So first of all, just to back up a little bit, what is this? So to figure out how to grow this, let's talk about really, where we are as far as what kind of a product. We're a user-generated content platform. So just like YouTube, Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, plenty of others. There's a lot of big names out there, and at the end of the day, we're competing with them for attention and engagement. So how do we compete? So do we throw a bunch of money at this? Do we try and raise a bunch of rounds to be able to put investment dollars into it, roll the dice, and hope that we end up being one of these fortunate logos on the screen that you remember, or one of the hundreds of others in history that nobody remembers because they just didn't make it, right? That's a challenging way to solve that problem. So we went at it maybe a little bit more of the Midwestern way. We look for the problems to solve. Like I mentioned at the beginning of this presentation, our communities are already trying to provide this same type of content. These communities, whether they're chambers, visitors bureaus, or DMOs, they really lack the resources and the proper channels to be able to promote their communities in a way that highlights what makes them unique and really a great option for people looking to get out and explore. So that's what we do. We help communities who are frustrated with outdated marketing solutions, and we connect them with an online platform and a vibrant community of content creators. Together, we provide handcrafted adventures that genuinely connect their audience and feature what makes their communities unique and memorable. So we have over 150 adventures from over 35 creators, and we just started selling partnership opportunities to communities 2 months ago. So we're continuing to onboard communities that are searching for a better way to connect with their travelers. So let's talk about why we're the team to be able to bring this to market. So I've been fortunate enough to have led through 2 successful exits. I spent the last 10 years creating and managing software teams from idea through acquisition. And Andy Vig brings over 10 years of experience at Microsoft, architecting large-scale solutions while managing teams of developers. Collectively, we have over 30 years of software dev experience and over 10 years of startup experience. So now that you know a little bit about what Shrpa is, we'd love for you to go out and support your local communities by going on a Shrpa adventure this weekend or even tonight. And if you don't have any adventures in your community, help us to resolve that problem by creating your own adventures, sharing what you love about your community, and sharing us with your chambers, your visitors bureaus, DMOs, and EDAs. But most of all, follow along with us on our journey. So things are changing fast, and we'd love for you to be able to join us on that. So just as a recap here, we're gaining traction quickly. And with COVID, actually, local travel is now the only travel. And so people are discovering just how much they love it. And we have the experience needed to be able to put together a team to make this a success. So we'd love for you to join us as we prepare to introduce this to the rest of the world. As we noted, Minnesota loves us, so let's help everyone else love us too. I want to thank you again for the opportunity to tell you about Shrpa, and I'd love to answer any questions that you might have.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Chris. I'll have you pull down your contact information, then we can put it back up at the end of the discussion here. Again, just as the last time, if you have any questions or comments for Chris, please feel free to use the raise your hand feature or type your message in chat, and I'll call on you to ask your question.
Hey, Chris, great presentation. Question for you in terms of the marketing message. When you're approaching the chambers and stuff, one of the other organizations, the types of organizations I thought of was like, we have Nicollet Bike Shop and Bent River Outfitters and these kinds of organizations whose job it is to take people out on adventures. What role do you see for them in kind of pulling them into that marketing circle, as you're coming into a community?
Yeah. So yeah, as you mentioned, there's already people out there that are trying to create experiences for people. And so we see that in a couple of different ways. So for the people that are already trying to create experiences, this is a great way for them to be able to promote some of those experiences that they're doing with people on guided adventures, but being able to put them out there in maybe a little bit of a more of a lightweight manner to be able to say, hey, here's something that could intrigue you and let you know a little bit more about what we provide, but just give you a taste of that that you can go out and do on your own. So that scales a little bit more. That's something that, especially now at a time when it's difficult to bring people together to do things, that allows them to be able to give a little bit of that experience, but allows people to do it on their own so that they can go out there and have some of that. And then also on top of that, we also look at this as a great way for businesses. And so the one question that comes out similar to that is, well, are businesses promoting their own businesses on this? Is that a kosher thing to be doing? Well, in a lot of ways, that really is, because these are multi-stop adventures. These are people going to multiple different locations, and what better way to explore a business than from somebody who works there? And so it's a similar type of thing as a barista or a bartender would say, well, here's what I love to do in the community, right? So after you stop here, go down to this place down the street. Same thing that you can do now, just in an app form and online form, somewhere that people can find this information without having to stop into your location first.
Chris, are these, if I'm remembering correct, they're all single day adventures, or can you plan multi-day trip type things in here?
Yeah, so as we're talking to visitors bureaus, DMOs, destination marketing organizations, those, the weekend trip is kind of the holy grail there of what people are going for, right? So how do you get people to be able to spend the entire weekend in the community? And what we've been telling them so far is a great way to be able to do that is just do day one, day two. That is the full day. The single day adventure is really the limitation, one of the limitations that we put on the adventures to be able to make it a little easier to create. And so then we highlight that with a day one, day two, or day one, and here's an extra half day that you can do. And the nice thing with that is it allows people to be able to kind of put together what they think would, they can say, here's what a great weekend trip is, but then they can augment that or change that up a little bit if they only have a couple of hours before they need to take off on a Sunday or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Looks like Garrett has a question for you.
Do you want to ask that question, Garrett?
Yeah, I was having some issues with my mute. So thanks for speaking, Chris. So in addition to essentially recruiting people to create these adventures, how else may we help support Shrpa and the vision while also supporting our regional businesses?
Yeah, and I think the first part of that is the biggest piece, is going out, create adventures to be able to highlight your community is really the biggest way that you can help promote it. And then go out and find those adventures that are something that you can still do at this time, right? And so that's something that go out there and be creative about, doing just short little adventures that get outside, but then also get out of your house, and then support these businesses through takeout and things like that, right? So that's really the biggest way that you can support us, is creating adventures and going on these adventures and providing some of that feedback. So I guess really the second part of that is providing the feedback part of this. We're a year and a half into this. This isn't a fully developed, we don't have every feature that we want to put in there already in there. There's a lot that we have that we know we want to put in, but every day, as we're working with different people, as we're getting good feedback, as we're thinking through the way that it works now, it helps us to be able to understand what are the features that we need to be thinking about and addressing. And the more people that we have being able to provide that information to us, that really helps us to be able to think through that properly and provide the right content and the right experience to people.
Chris, another question I had is, how do you handle season-specific adventures? Or if there's an adventure and 2 stops on the adventure, makes sense year-round, but the middle stop is kayaking, and maybe in the winter it needs to be something else.
Ooh, I like where you're going with on that second part there. So how do we handle seasonality right now? Seasonality is when you're entering the adventure in there, you highlight what the seasonality of it is, of when it starts and ends. And so you'll notice right now, you'll see things for skiing or for snow tubing, but you wouldn't see those in the summer. So those, it just has date ranges basically. And so similarly, right now you're not seeing all of the adventures that include going to the city pool, because that's just not a good thing to be doing right now. And so it's the seasonality is there for the entire adventure. I like where you're going with that last piece, and that's something that we've thought about, is there a way to be able to say, well, you can do this this one part of a three stop in the summer but not in the winter, but it still makes sense as a 2-stop, right? That's something that's getting a little bit more edge casing. We haven't done that yet, but I can see that being something in the future potentially. Awesome. The challenge there is always, how do you make it as easy to be able to enter, create, interact with as possible, while also offering all of the different features that could potentially be there.
Right. Lindsay has a question.
Hi, I like the app. I would totally use it. I feel like I'm always going to different sources to find something to do. So it'd be nice to go to like one stop. I was wondering, like, and maybe you mentioned this and I missed it, but like how will you increase the number of people contributing to the app, and like is there an incentive to do that? And then my second question was like, does it include where to stay? Like, if you're traveling, eventually when you can travel farther distances, like campgrounds or hotels or Airbnb, or is it just mostly just the activity?
All right, yeah, good questions there. So first of all, how are we working to increase the number of creators, the people that are creating content? One of the things that we're doing is, and we talked about this a little bit with the communities, is part of the subscription for all of the communities is the ability to have some content created right off the top. And so we've been actually reaching out to people that are already creating similar content on different platforms, and we're introducing them to Shrpa to just introduce this as, this is the platform to create day trip type of content, right? So you have Instagram for posting really beautiful photos, you have your WordPress blog for telling a story, but if you want to create engaging content where people can follow along, that's what Shrpa is about. And so we've been reaching out to these content creators to invite them into the invite them into the platform. And then that kind of goes to the second part of your question there about how do we incentivize them. So as the subscription with the communities come on board, we actually, some of those creators, the ones that are creating really good content on the platform, we can then pay them to go out and create some of those first adventures for a community. So it kind of kicks it off. So that's not the thing that happens for all of the adventures. Actually, there's only, I want to say 4 or 8 of those adventures right now that we're paid anybody to go out and create some content for it. But that'll be a growing thing as more communities come on board. Some of those adventures will be paid for by the community to have people come in and create that through their subscription that they create. And then beyond those people that are creating adventures for communities, we're also doing some challenges. So some ways to incentivize of creating. We had one for winter adventures that we just did, where we had people creating the best winter adventure. We had a prize for that. And so that was a $100 prize that went out for people creating the best winter adventure. We'll continue to work on those through the seasons to help get more content in there. And then finally, at the end of the day, the other big thing that we just have to work on is how do we make it more engaging, more enjoyable to create content, right? So as you go out there and you explore on your own and you get ideas of like, oh man, I think it would be fun to be able to do this, but maybe in a little different way, or maybe I go there instead. How can we make that as easy and engaging as possible? That's really the last piece of that, is just making it fun. And then as far as including where to stay, that's not something that we have with it so far as in between. There are some people that highlight and suggest some of those things on it, but it's not really part of the experience right now.
Yvonne had a resource.
I was just mentioning that there's on MankatoPoetryWalk.com, there's an interactive Google map that has all of the outdoor art in Mankato and North Mankato. It's a little hobby of mine over the last couple of years. And I was thinking that kind of thing could be a great, starting point for adventures. Hey, let's pick these 2 parks, go for a walk, go for a hike or snowshoeing, add in coffee at this great little spot, and make that into an adventure. That's the kind of thing that you're looking at, right?
Perfectly. Yes, exactly. And that right there kind of highlights the reason why we're working with the communities on our monetization model for this, is because they really value getting people out into the community for all of these different things. And it's not just the businesses that can pay for advertising their business or something along those lines, like maybe some other platforms are doing. That's maybe a little bit more of a direct route, is go straight to the businesses. But the challenge there is then you can only highlight the businesses that can monetize, and not all of the parks and the art walks and all of the things that make a community really unique and enjoyable, that aren't something that can be directly monetized in any way.
I've got a follow-up question. Is the app available now? I just was searching for it on the Apple.
Good question. Yeah, I slipped up there and said app. It is. So it's a progressive web app. And so the nice thing when you're going into a new community, you don't have to download the app to get to it. So just go to Shrpa.com. You can actually add it to your home screen just like an app. So it'll work just in really the same way. And it's just a progressive web app that works just the same as what it would on your phone as it would on your PC.
Gary, did your question get completely answered, or did you have any clarification?
Well, I guess I just was not totally clear as far as laying out the revenue stream. You talked about subscriptions to the community, and maybe I missed, I apologize, Chris,
No worries.
that, what that fee is, if that means that I'm in New Ulm, but New Ulm didn't pay to the subscription, so I can't generate, experience.
Oh, good question.
So
yep.
I wasn't clear how that works, that where are you making money? If you clarified there's not really an app, is there a membership? I see a login on the Shrpa.com, so do I need to pay a membership fee? So the revenue stream, how you're making money, it wasn't really clear to me how that's laid out.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I appreciate you asking that so I can clarify. So you can create content anywhere. Every community can create content anywhere. Every DMO, chamber, visitors bureau can create content anywhere that they want to do that. And you'll see that with some of the communities. New Ulm's actually a really great example of that. They haven't created, they're not on board as a subscriber yet, but their marketing team has gone in and created a bunch of New Ulm adventures, right? And so it's content that can highlight your community. Where our subscription comes in is in a couple of parts, and the only people that are paying are the community. So these are the people where there's already this business model of how do they get people to create content for their community in an engaging way? There's something that they're already paying for in different ways already, whether it's through bringing in a travel influencer or paying local bloggers to be able to write about the community in different ways. That's something that already exists. So we're just leaning into that business model a little bit. And so one, they pay us, so it's a yearly fee that they pay us, and that starts by kicking off some content created in their community. But then also the other big part of that subscription is being able to bring our content back to their site, similar to what we were showing on KTDC, where it's a local TV station here in the area, that they have the ability to bring all of our adventures to their site. It's a similar thing that a community can do then when they're a subscriber, is all of the adventures in their community are then brought back to their site. So Cannon Falls is a really good example of that, where cannonroots.com features Shrpa adventures. They didn't create those on their site, it's just brought in from there. And then in addition to that, they have a little bit of a presence on our site as well that highlights the community. So it gives them a little bit more promotion. And then finally, they get a little bit more of information around what type of adventures people are interested in their community and surrounding communities, so that they can know where they want to put their resources as far as improving their community for that. So as a user, as a traveler, you never pay. As a creator, you never pay. As a community, that's where the opportunity is to monetize.
What is that? How much is that annual fee, or is that a scale on how big the community is?
Yeah, it's a scale a little bit more on how much content and how interactive the bringing it back to the site is. It starts at $1,200 a year. So it starts out where it can, any community down to the smallest one that we have right now is Lanesboro is a community, and that's a town of 750 people. Now they're a little bit more tourism focused, but we want to make sure that it works for communities of any size, which is another thing where it helps us to be able to grow that a little bit more.
Okay. Thanks.
Chris, what was that Cannon Falls website?
Cannonroots.com.
Riffs?
Yeah, it's
like
just
RIFTS?
I'm sorry, Roots, ROOTS.
Roots.
Cannon
Okay.
Roots. Yep.
Lindsay had a comment in here.
Oh, I was just gonna say, when you're talking about adventures, it made me think of outdoor rock climbing, which is like super popular in a small group of people, like in North Shore and Taylor Falls. But it's a smaller segment, so something to consider. I'm sure people would be interested in highlighting their adventure. Yeah.
Yes, really good point. You will actually be seeing some of that coming up soon. Actually, the conversation that I have right after this is a guy that's the leader of the rock climbing club at Winona State. And he's also part of journalism. We're talking to him about creating some adventures and actually working with some of these outdoor communities to be able to create content. I'm really big into mountain biking, and so I see that as another really great opportunity. People are always looking for ways of how do these outdoor experiences help economically boost the community? Well, a way that you can do that is to be able to tie it together in an adventure and say, like, when you're here doing rock climbing or going on your mountain biking adventures, that's a great way to be able to support a local business at the same time of, grabbing some coffee or grabbing some food afterwards.
I haven't been able to get a hold of the contractor.
One final question that I had. So I was trying to create an adventure, and where I got stuck was I didn't know which business to choose. I wanted to do coffee. There's a couple of places I like getting coffee, and I'm like, how do I pick just one? Is there any way to say, get coffee, I recommend here or here as this stop on your adventure?
Maybe you could. There's people that have do that a little bit, but we try and push you not to. And the reason why that is we want to make sure that you're providing, like, here's why when I'm doing this, this is the place to go to because it's right down the street or because it's got the perfect little combination for it. And the great thing, if you want to highlight two different places, create two different adventures, right? So, like, here's the reason why I'd go to this place on this day with this, and here's the reason why I go to that place on a different one. And so it's the other thing with this is it's nice to be able to give people more options of what really interests them, right? And so you can highlight, like, this is why I like to go to this place. And if you can give that information and highlight that, then it can help resonate better with the people that want to experience it. So that's why we try and push to be able to go to single places, because that's also the other challenge with what we talked about earlier with the chambers and DMOs, you're trying to highlight everybody, but when you highlight everybody, then like nobody gets highlighted, because then it's like, okay, well then it's still up to me to try and figure out what I'm going to do for the day, and I've got to try and figure out the best way to do that. So.
Gotcha. Are there any other questions here? I know Yvonne was just commenting on some other groups that would be good to hopefully get onto this platform to try to help create some adventures for us. So we might need to reach out to the bike and walk advocates and ask them to create an adventure or two for us. Beyond that, if there's no other questions, if one of our organizers wants to ask the final 1 Million Cups question.
I can. Chris, what can we as a community do for you?
Well, I think it was already highlighted, you know, both in the question that came up there with Garrett and what Yvonne put into the chat there, is just going out there and creating adventures in your community and or trying it out in your community, right? So check it out, see what it seems like to you, see if you can, if there's any feedback that you can provide us. Like we're early on in this, we're developing this all in-house. This is what we do, and so there are plenty of features coming, but anything that we can get as far as feedback and guidance from the community is so helpful at this time. And so definitely reach out with any advice or ideas or content that you might want to create.